Well, welcome. So you're at Poster House. We are the first and only museum in the United States dedicated to the art and history of the poster. So everything you see on the walls is original. These are all from the 1920s and 30s. And in between Don making cocktails, he'll make 3 cocktails this evening. Nicho and I will be going around talking about some of our favorite pieces in the exhibition. I also have to give a special shout out to Don and Claudia for sponsoring this program for now 2 years. Thank you very much.
Just for those of you who haven't tuned in before, this began during the shutdown as an online way to keep our sanity project, and it morphed into something more than that, and this is the physical culmination of about 2 years of online programming. So it's one thing to drink cocktails home by yourself in the middle of a pandemic while talking about posters. It's a whole other thing to be with all of you, so thank you all for coming.
Yes. And without further ado, Don, will you tell us how to make a bee's knees?
Sure. I'll tell you not just how to make it, but talk a little bit about the history of it. And actually, all 3 cocktails today are tied in with Art Deco. Now, during the Art Deco era, Prohibition was in full force in the United States. So many of the best bartenders from the US moved overseas. Southeast Asia, South America, Cuba had a lot, all through the Caribbean, and of course, Europe. So many of them landed in Paris and worked in bars catering to people who liked American-style cocktails, meaning Americans who were in Paris, and they tended to call them American bars. Now this cocktail, well, back in the 19th and early 20th centuries, they had different ways of calling something the best. Now in the 1800s, one of the ways to say the best was something was a daisy. It was a daisy cocktail. BB guns. Daisy BB guns, it's because the guy who shot it the first, who made it, is like, oh, this is a daisy. It's the best. Now in the 20s, they had more fanciful things. They had the cat's meow, the cat's pajamas, and the bee's knees. So that's where this cocktail name comes from. There's a legend that was printed in 1929 that the unsinkable Molly Brown, who survived the Titanic sinking, that she had invented it or had somebody make it for her. But I think that's apocryphal. Chances are more likely that a guy named Frank Meyer, he was an Austrian bartender who was the first head bartender at the Café Parisien at the Hotel Ritz in Paris. This is back in 1921. He had trained in New York at the Hoffman House, which is actually was not too far from here. It's going to come up later when I talk about the next cocktail, but it was the bar where all the politicians of New York, and that means all the politicians from all over the world, came on hung out and talked. So my guess is, because he was in Paris in 1921, that he moved there because of Prohibition. And he's said to have created many cocktails at the Café Parisien, including the bee's knees. So in 1936, Meyer wrote The Artistry of Mixing Drinks. And he had the recipe for a bee's knees as, I'm quoting, in shaker, the juice of 1/4 lemon, a teaspoon of honey, 1/2 glass, 1 ounce of gin, shake well and serve. That's pretty much like a gin sour, but sweetened with honey instead of sugar. Now, a little bit info about Meyer. During World War II, when the Nazis were occupying France and occupying Paris, he still worked the bar at the Hotel Ritz, at the Café Parisien. And he ran the bar while he was secretly helping British spies, the French resistance. He was helping Jewish residents of the hotel get fake papers, all kinds of IDs and documents. And then there was something of a little bit of an embezzlement scandal, and he pretty much disappeared. We don't really know what happened to Mr. Meyer. But I'll show you how to make a bee's knees. And let me take this off so I don't get it wet. Okay, so we're going to start with 2 ounces of gin. This is a nice Scottish gin. It's got some cucumber flavor, which actually goes pretty well with the honey and lemon that we're going to have. So, here's my tin. Going to do, can everybody see? Okay. This is what you are drinking now. I'll show you how to make it at home. So that is 2 ounces of gin. Now, fresh lemon juice. I always say get fresh lemon juice, because fresh lemon juice or lime juice or whatever juices you're using are going to taste a lot better than if you have something from concentrate. So, here we go. It's going to be 3/4 of an ounce, which is probably what I'm going to get out of this half of a lemon. Usually I double strain it, but for ease, I'm just going to show you this here. There we go. That's about 3/4 of an ounce. And then a ½ ounce of honey syrup. Now, he said in his recipe honey. What bartenders generally do today, because honey is really hard to mix in a cocktail, so you mix it with equal parts water, simmer it, and the honey dissolves and becomes very much a liquid. So I'm going to add a ½ ounce of honey syrup, which I put it back in here and it's not coming out. There we go. Great. And then ice. Now we've got honey, we've got lemon juice in here. Traditionally what you do if you have juice or dairy or eggs is you shake it. Other cocktails you can stir. So there we go. There we go. This one's sticky. Okay. Then we've got our glass. What I would recommend is putting water and ice in the glass or leaving them in the fridge and having a nice chilled glass. But since I'm doing this demo here, we're just doing it this way. And then finally, get a nice, good-looking lemon and cut yourself a swath of a twist. What you do is you twist it over the top. You get maybe a little bit of the pith, but none of the actual lemon. You want the oil, so you twist it over top. Just express the oil over top, and then you can, for garnish, just good looks, just drop it in there, and then, I'm drinking what you're drinking, a bee's knees. So, cheers. Thank you for coming to the bee's knees. We'll come up next with a gin Ricky. So
what's going to happen is, with each cocktail, we're going to do a little segment of the exhibition, and then we're going to come back here for the next cocktail, then do another segment of the exhibition, and then come back for a third cocktail.
And also, since I realize most of you actually haven't watched Posters and Cocktails before, none of you know who we are. So I'm Angelina, I'm the chief curator here, so you can ask me any question about posters and I will be able to answer it. Nicholas Lowry is the director and COO, CFO? Yeah. CFO, he owns Swann Auction Galleries, which is the best auction house in the world for posters. And Don Spiro is the owner, proprietor of the Green Fairy Society, an absinthe society in New York. So that's how we all know each other.
So we have cocktail specialty expertise, we have poster expertise, and we're going to be sharing that all with you tonight. And we're actually going to start, Angelina,
this way.
Take it away. And feel free to heckle. We are heckle friendly.
Will there be a fashion segment?
You will win hands down, so no, we're not going to do that. And we'll be heckling each other too, so feel free. Just so follow Angelina down to the first tranche. If you're done with your drinks, you can leave them on the table. Otherwise, you can carry them around.
Come on, just kind of half moon around me. All right, so this is the beginning of the exhibition. So come on in, and yeah, definitely grab the snacks. They're I've already pilfered all of the Chex Mix, so if there's no peanuts, that's my fault. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Oh, you can walk in front of the camera. They don't. All right, so this is usually where I begin the tours of the exhibition, but we're not giving you a straight up tour tonight. We're going to be talking about our favorite pieces in the show and why you should care about them. So if you want an actual tour of the whole exhibition, I do that plenty of other times. You can find it on our website. But I'm going to start with this poster by Cassandra. Cassandra is the most famous and the most represented artist in this show. He's one of my favorite artists from the Art Deco period. I'm going to start with two posters. They're both from 1925. This one, a lot of poster historians will date this as his first poster. That's a complete lie. His other posters just weren't very good before this. This is his first good poster. I love this poster, and I usually open the show talking about it because it has so many hallmarks of the Art Deco period So you've reduced the human form to like pure geometry. You have the ovular head, this like slightly longer ovular body, the arms, it's like this rhythm of ovals that your eye follows around the page. I also love that the cycle, like the bicycle, is at the same angle as the text, creating this dynamic sense of movement. And movement, again, is something you will see in all of these posters. An idea of pushing forward through space is very much a part of the Art Deco like ideology. And the other thing that I like to point out is if you look at the eyes, they're these vacant headlight eyes. And if you look at other posters throughout this show, you will see that time and time again, that blending of man and machine is so paramount at this point in time. So you'll see that, again, throughout the exhibition. And that's why I love this piece. Now, if you guys don't know Cassandra by name, you probably know him for something else. You're a very young audience, but I feel like some of y'all is bougie. So does anyone have anything with the Yves Saint Laurent logo on it, like on them? Like a YSL belt, perhaps, or purse? Well then, if you did, do you know like the YSL stack? He did that. He also did a lot of scarves for Hermes. They're terribly ugly, but he did them. So that is why you should know Cassandra, because he's also, as I will say later on, he's really kind of the first graphic designer in the contemporary sense, in that he created like brand identities for corporations that other designers weren't really doing yet. So he's very important. Now, before I go on to that,
can you tell us something about the typography?
Well, there's no typography in any of these posters. It's all letter forms. Typography requires movable type. Everything that you see in these posters at this point in time is all done by hand, so it's not typography. And to do this is all stone lithography, so you'd be writing it backwards on the stone. So it takes a certain skill.
I meant sort of less pedantically and more graphically.
I'm nothing if not pedantic, darling.
You are, that is true.
No, graphically, I mean, it's gorgeous. Although the best typeface in the show, there is a typeface actually. So if you see the opening wall where it says Art Deco, Commercializing the Avant-Garde, the Art Deco typeface is actually a typeface. It is also by Cassandra, and it's a typeface he did called Before. And it is the 4th variant, I think, of the typeface. He did many variants of it. And so our graphic designer who designed the whole show, Ola Baldic, she used that as part of her exhibition design. And then the slats that you see in the walls are mimicking those elements within the typeface. So the whole thing calls back on itself a lot, which I love. Ola's just like, chef's kiss amazing. Is that what you wanted me to ask?
No, not even close.
What have I missed?
One of the other great things, aside from the imagery, is, I'm going to say typography incorrectly, but the letter forms,
Very incorrectly.
the way that the letters change colors based on the background. So you have the brown oval of the bike ring, and within the oval, the lettering is...
Velodrome.
Bike ring in English. It's white, and then as it spreads outwards, and you'll see this in other posters, it becomes brown. So the legibility is absolutely fantastic. And the other thing to note, it is probably the most artistic way that the artist ever signed his name, along the curve of the velodrome, if you'd like.
Velodrome, thank you. And velodrome is an English word.
It can be. Velodrome means bike ring.
No, I think you wanted to talk about these before I moved on to the other.
So
I'll move over here.
in 1925 in Paris, there was an exhibition called the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs et Industriels Modernes. And the key thing to look at here, and you're going to love correcting me on this, Arts Deco. And that is where the term Art Deco first came into usage.
Yes, no, that's true, that's true. But not until the 60s. Art Deco is a completely made-up term. It means nothing.
So this style existed before this seminal exhibition in Paris in 1925, but it was the 1925 exhibition that codified the name for future generations. And for that exhibition, of everything in that style. So it was art, it was graphic design, it was furniture, it was textile design, it was silverware design, rug design. They had commissioned 4 posters. 2 of them are here, and 5 posters? Who's the 5th?
Some schmuck, but like it was 5 posters.
So, and the majority of this collection comes from a single owner, Bill Kraus,
he has the greatest collection of Art Deco posters in the world. He is like the best. But these 2 pieces are not owned by him.
And the one signature poster from the exhibition he didn't have, but these are 2 of the 5. And what's most interesting about them is how really un-Art Deco they are. Specifically this one here. This was by an artist named Bourdelle, who was a classic artist. And he was a sculptor, and the piece looks like a fine piece, but it has nothing to do with what we would think of as Art Deco. And this one by Charles Lupeau, whose work you'll see later in the show, who really was one of the great artists and a great Art Deco designer. This one sort of plays to it. The theme here is that these industrial factories are belching smoke into the sky. Oh, but they're roses, right? So it's the combination of industry and art. So the roses are coming out of the chimney. And again, in both cases, I'm going to keep using the word typography. The letter forms are singular and unique. Here, I think Lupeau designed them himself, and there it's entirely possible it was put in by a different artist.
This actually might be movable type, actually. So I stand corrected that this piece may actually have typography in it. Yes?
Why is that one not Art Deco? I mean, especially thinking about
These two?
typography or the letter.
Well, the typography is certainly Art Deco, but to me, I just look at the image. If I compare these two, I would automatically say this one is Art Deco, this isn't. And it's subjective. There's no right or wrong.
Art Deco, what is it?
I would say it's more classical,
Classical,
French,
illustrational.
figurative.
So what I wasn't planning on doing is, like, my whole thesis for the exhibition is that Art Deco means very little. It's just as you see, like, the subtitle of the exhibition is Commercializing the Avant-Garde. So if you just turn around, look at everything on that wall. There is nothing that actually ties all of those posters together graphically. They are all incredibly different. So Art Deco, in my thesis for the exhibition, is the manifestation of different avant-garde movements depending on where you are in the world. So in Italy, it looks like Futurism, if you look at the Veuve poster. In France, it can look like Cubism. These two posters in the middle, Swiss, General Modernism. The Donné, Orphism. The Arnold Constable looks like Fernand Léger's, like very weighty, cylindrical women. There's nothing that actually ties all of those together, and yet they are all considered Art Deco. So Art Deco, if you're going to go for hallmarks, like lots of movement, minimalist forms, geometry, but there really isn't actually one thing you can point to as this is absolutely Art Deco. Did you want to talk about the PKZs?
No, but I will talk about the fact that while there is perhaps in your thesis nothing that holds Art Deco together, much like the Supreme Court definition of pornography, I think we can agree that we know it when we see it. And to my eye, these two are really wonderful Art Deco posters. This one in a more classical way, as Angelina pointed out, the geometry of the lights, the silhouettes of the people, and the geometry of the car are absolutely exquisite. And the artist, Alexei Brodovich, was a great designer who ended up coming to America and working for Vanity Fair.
Oh, I don't remember.
One of the big magazines. And this one by Jean Dupas, who, no matter how you decide to interpret Art Deco, was considered one of the great Art Deco artists. His work decorated many of the public rooms on the Normandy, which was the most famous Art Deco ship. And while the work may be very Leger-esque, it is certainly considered to be archly Art Deco in its design. And I think to Angelina's point, this is advertising a department store. So you have what really is this very high art form being used to advertise something mundane or run-of-the-mill.
Also, if you look at this, you have like the past, the present, and the future. That's what the three graces are in this, which I love this piece. This also did not belong to Bill. This is one of the three pieces we had to buy for this exhibition because I wanted a Dupas. But we're actually going to take a look at the piece behind you, which if you look at the opening of the wall, you see how it's like a pink face? Look at the opening wall. Ta-da! The exhibition designer was inspired by this poster. This is one of 3 known copies in the world. This is incredibly rare, incredibly important. Also by Cassandra. You'll see that I hit on Cassandra a lot because he is the most important artist in the show, in my opinion. Does anyone who doesn't speak French know what this is advertising? No. It's advertising newspaper. And here are some things I noticed right away. So L'Intransigeant, you don't have the full name, which means that the newspaper was in circulation to enough people that you would recognize without having to see the whole name. So it's like the New York T. The other thing, at this point in time, the printed word is competing with a lot of new technology, particularly radio, which isn't like really new, but the widespread use of radio is rampant right now. So you have the wires with the ceramic insulators going into the ear of this shouting figure, shouting the news at you. So they're basically saying that they are going to get you the news as fast as a radio would. Not possible, but great idea. And there are these amazing pictures that exist of this poster on the sides of delivery vans. So yes, you would see it on the street, but you would also see it on the delivery van going around a city, which I think is lovely. Any questions before we go around the corner?
Look how the letter forms change color, how it's black on white and then white on black. Again, one of Cassandra's signature legibility moves.
All right, we're going to go around the corner. I've got the 5-minute warning before the next cocktail, so we're going to breeze through them. So head on this way.
Don't do that wall, and I'll just do the start and then we'll end.
All right, yeah. I'll focus on this guy.
Okay.
Yes, and this is the one I'm going to talk about too.
Matches your tie. Colors.
Okay, so we're only going to hit on 2 pieces in this section because we have 5 minutes for the next cocktail, and we all came here to drink. So I love that Ola, again, our exhibition designer, she created a narrative for me here that I wasn't expecting, but this becomes like a massive touch point in my tour. Everything on this wall advertises sports. A sporting event was not something you necessarily think of when you think of advertising posters of this period, but you've got amazing representation here. And it also goes to another point in my thesis that I didn't mention yet, is I claim that Art Deco is the first global art movement. There is no country, no continent that wasn't touched by Art Deco. That had never happened before. So we have representation from, at the time, British Mandate of Palestine, France with this amazing poster by Cassandra where the tennis player is lobbing the ball at you, inviting you to lob it back at him. It's very interactive. Poland, and then the 2 posters I like to focus on is Argentina and Uruguay. Now again, because of the 5-minute warning, fuck Argentina. We're gonna look at Uruguay. So this poster is for the first World Cup. Amazing. Now, why was Uruguay, particularly Montevideo, incredibly prosperous at this point in time? What allowed them to be super wealthy, where European and American tourists were coming there, vacationing all the time? Amazing Art Deco architecture is being built, like Formula 1 races are being held. What made Montevideo able to do that?
British owned?
No. Refrigerated shipping. Just as sexy as British owned. So refrigerated shipping allowed Uruguay and Argentina actually their beef industry exploded. So they were allowed to sell beef to America and Europe, and that made those countries incredibly wealthy at this point in time. So it's the centennial of Uruguay's constitution. They're insanely wealthy. They are now ready to have the first World Cup. They invite all of Latin America, and everyone's like, yeah, we're totally coming. And then they're like, wait, we want to invite Europe too. So they invite all the soccer teams in Europe to come and participate in the first World Cup. And only 4 countries are like, maybe? And they're like, don't worry, we will pay for your entire team to come here. We will pay their room and board. We will pay their travel expenses. We will feed them if you come and participate. And even then, only 4 countries agreed to come, and it was, and I have to check the wall label because I always forget one, France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia made the trip. And in the end, it was Uruguay versus Argentina. Uruguay kicks ass, they win. So it's their centennial, so it's like a massive moment for Uruguay. But that's not even what's cool about this poster. What's cool about this poster is the artist. He is Uruguayan. He went to Europe. He studied under the Bauhaus masters. He studied under a bunch of European artists, and he brought European modernism back to Uruguay. Huge deal. So what you see here, you see like the reduced geometric forms that, again, hallmarks of European modernism at the time, the saturated colors, like the human form that's like without definition, like the very flat. But then you see it blended with the zigzag arrow, which is quintessential to Uruguayan textiles and Uruguayan pottery. These letter forms, very reminiscent of Uruguayan sign painting. So it's this blend, which again, part of my thesis, of European modernism with indigenous motifs that allows Art Deco to be the first global art movement. So this is like a massive touchstone for the show. Love this poster dearly. Tossing over Nicho for that.
I just can't help but think that only at the poster house will you hear about beef.
There's no "the" in our name.
The beef industry
Like
exploding.
Madonna.
The beef industry exploding is the one phrase I'm going to take away from Poster House. My beef industry
You're on
is
our
exploding.
board.
So, another poster by Cassandra here for a shipping line. And just a couple of things to point out. Not quite as prominent in his other works do you see the legibility of the text, but right here we see how where the background is white, the text is gray, and the background is gray, the text is white.
I'm just behind you.
I wasn't sure if you were looking. So the wonderful thing about this is it's for one of the, for the flagship of the Holland America line, the new Statendam, which was launched, I believe, this same year in 1929. And for an ocean liner company to be so proud of their ship, of their flagship, the artist chooses not to represent the ship at all. So all he focuses on, to Angelina's point, is the exploding beef industry of the ship in the forms of the cowls and the funnels. And through this sort of majestic depiction of something that is so technical and normally not appreciated, he manages to convey the power of the ship. You see these sort of lines, I guess holding the masts up or holding the, not the masts, but whatever the telegraph post. Yeah, not the funnels held up on their own. But the other thing that you can see, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you just get a trace of the smoke coming out of the funnels, and it's the only wavy part of this otherwise very angular image. So you will see, maybe not in other examples in the show, I guess in some other examples, the focus on technology was more important than anything else. And by doing this, I mean, the poster was immensely successful. The ship was famous, the line was prosperous, and this was a whole new approach to advertising, just a magnificent piece. The yellow funnels with the green and white bands, that was the livery of the ship line, so he got that in. Just an amazing poster.
And also, this is my De Stijl wall. Everything on here is basically for stuff that's in the Netherlands. It's all De Stijl inspired, because I'm inspired by local avant-gardes. But anyway, Salvador said I have time for 2 questions before we go get more drunk. Any questions or just drinking?
Come to the bar.
Come to the bar. Will they turn my mic off in between?
They just told him to go over to the bar to listen to the demo, so like 1 minute, come on in. Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Am I good back there? Good? All right, great. Wait for everybody to come around. Is that everybody? Oh no, there's still some more people back there. Oh, if anybody needs water, and I highly recommend if you're drinking 3 cocktails tonight, you have water. There is water over here. The next cocktail that's coming around right now is a gin Ricky. Oh, I love that jacket. Thank you. And, all right. Let me tell you a little bit about a gin Ricky. Let me tell you about what you are drinking. So, legend has it that in 1883, Civil War veteran Colonel Joe Ricky and bartender Jared Bangura made a whiskey highball with lime. That's whiskey in a tall glass, a highball glass with seltzer, added lime, inventing the Joe Ricky cocktail. Or Colonel Joe Ricky and bartender George Williamson invented it at Shoemaker's Saloon in Washington, D.C. Whichever legend you believe doesn't matter. Either way, by the 1890s, New York had started putting gin in the Ricky instead of whiskey, and it became the gin Ricky, and that's the most popular version. That just really took off, much to Colonel Joe Ricky's chagrin. However, both the Joe Ricky cocktail and the gin Ricky cocktail were names that he then trademarked. It's also gin Ricky is the official cocktail of Washington, D.C. It's very much a politician's cocktail. And there's reason behind that. Now, there's a lot of argument as to which side of the Civil War Colonel Ricky fought. But he did become a Democrat lobbyist. So that means chances are he fought for the South. He was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and a part owner in Shoemaker's Bar. And that's where all the politicians drank. Remember I said the Hoffman House in New York was where all the politicians drank? Shoemakers in Washington, D.C., dive bar, dingy bar, really sketchy. You wouldn't want to go in there. All the politicians in D.C. did drink there. He was recorded as regretting his legacy, that it would be a cocktail name after all the political stuff he did. And he hated the gin version. Eventually he moved to New York, not too far from the Hoffman House, and he had a heart attack right outside the Hoffman House in 1903. Same time that Frank Meyer was training over there. So, great 1800s cocktail. Why are we serving it here for Art Deco? Well, gin rickeys became very popular, especially by the 20s, and they were the favorite cocktail of F. Scott Fitzgerald. In fact, they are the only cocktail, only mixed drink that is mentioned by name in The Great Gatsby. Published in 1925, same year as the Art Deco exhibition in Paris, and F. Scott was also one of those expatriates who drank a lot in Paris. Quoting from Great Gatsby, Tom came back preceding 4 gin rickeys that clicked full of ice. Gatsby took up his drink. They certainly look cool, he said with visible tension. We drank in long, greedy swallows. So whether you drink in long, greedy swallows or not, it's up to you. I'm going to show you how to make it. It's a really, really simple cocktail. And we're going to start, again, with gin. It's our second gin cocktail. Our last one's going to be brandy, cognac. So this one is, 2 ounces of gin. Here we go. 1, 2, and then a ½ ounce of lime juice. Again, use fresh limes. And this is one of those cocktails that, actually, you know what? I'm going to build it in the glass. There's different ways of making it. One is by shaking the gin and the lime juice, chilling it, but also diluting it, and then adding ice. But I'm going to just build this right in the glass, show you how to do that. So this is one of the few cocktails that I'm going to show you how to do that has juice in it that you're not going to be shaking. So we've got 2 ounces of gin right in a glass. Going to get fresh lime, just cut. And hopefully I won't get any pulp in here. You can use a fine mesh strainer and do a double strain to make sure you don't have any pulp. Let me see how much this is. It should be about a ½ ounce, which is what I want. So let's see. Oh, almost exactly ½ ounce. That's perfect, right in there. Okay. Then we are going to, oh, geez, I'm sorry. Did I put it wrong? Give me 30 seconds, I'll be right back, or less than that. 10 seconds, I'll be right back with some ice. I just used my ice. Refresh with ice each time. So, as if I never left. You've got your 2 ounces of gin, you've got your ½ ounce of lime, and then you fill it with ice. There we go. Take your bar spoon, stick in there, and you're going to stir it. If everybody can see, just give it a stir, mix it up, dilute it a little bit. Then you're going to cut a lime wheel. Some people will take half a lime and juice it that way and put the whole husk in. Some people prefer it that way, just for a garnish. And what you get is it doesn't just look pretty, but it's also on the nose that you can have the aroma of the lime. And then just top it with seltzer. Now again, if you want to make a Joe Ricky cocktail, it's done the same way, except you would use whiskey. And chances are he used rye whiskey. And that is your gin Ricky. Cheers. Oh, my pleasure.
It's good, strong.
It is very strong.
I'm not sure. It's stronger than it is delicious to me, but I have to talk, so I don't know. I could be wrong. Or not talk, as the case may be. I'm just going to sleep on one of these benches.
How is it? Good? Limey? No, if I get handsy and then Nicho gets in trouble, it becomes, there's a lot of liabilities. Yep. I don't think you can insure me enough, baby. Anyway, this poster almost didn't make it into the exhibition. We had to consider the possibility of a skylight and a cherry picker to get out of Bill's house, because this is a billboard. And this is a billboard at the height that you would have encountered it in the streets of Paris. They weren't like super high up yet, they were positioned like this. And this is also incredibly large for the time period. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of paper put together on the streets by the bill poster. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is all stone lithography, everything you see in here. So all of the colors are printed separately, black being the color that's printed last, and then they are put on the wall together to match up by the bill poster. So it's a fairly labor-intensive process by today's standards. Now, anyone who doesn't speak French, can you tell me what this is advertising? Bad guesses only.
Lumberjack school.
Executions? That is a bad guess. And I wish. That'd be awesome. Did someone say Grand Prix? I know why you said that. That is also not true. Although what this says is it won first prize at the Paris Expo of 1925.
Hang on, we've talked about this, you're wrong.
No, I'm right. You're wrong.
No, the Grand Prix was for the furniture.
Yeah,
not
no,
for
that's what I'm saying, that the company won the grand prize.
You didn't say that, you thought that, but I'm now giving
You're
voice to your thoughts.
I love it when you give voice to my thoughts. Anyway, yes, as Nicho vocalized, what I was meaning is that the poster did not win the first prize at the Paris Expo, the company did. No posters won any prizes at the Paris Expo. There weren't any posters on display at the Paris Expo.
What is it a poster for?
Well, that's the question. Does anyone know? Wood. Wood. Okay, yeah, we got boucher, which is log in French. Great. It's for a boucheron, which is a furniture store. And so you see the lumberjack felling the tree, creating this like great dynamic movement.
Hang on, do that again. I got to get my
want-
camera.
you want-
Don't stop. Don't. Hold it.
Where you want the
Hold on, I got the video. Okay, go. Do it.
do the great dynamic movement like that. So that's what's going on. This is an amazing billboard. This may be the only known surviving copy. I can't find another place that has a copy. The Bibliothèque Nationale probably does because they have a copy of anything. But basically, Bill's is the only known copy, making it super important.
How early was this in his career?
This is 1926, so it's not that early in Cassandra's career. But if it's a year after that Cycle Brillant bicycle poster that we looked at, so it's still early enough, but he did do stuff before then. What else can I say about that? Oh, there's an amazing thing on this poster that I love. Yes? What are the stamps? That's what I was just about, So these tell me so many good things about what's going on in this poster, and I love talking about this. So there are 2 ways a poster survives. The first way is that if you're a poster collector, you go to a poster dealer who is usually previously a print dealer. So in the 1880s, a man named Edmond Sagot, he was a print dealer. He's like, I'm gonna get into the poster business because I can sell my clients posters because what are posters but just bigger prints? And so he would go to the printer of the posters and he would say, okay, next time Cassandra, back then it would have been Charest, but next time Cassandra makes a poster, give me 50 copies with text, 50 copies without text for those who are reluctant to buy something with ad copy, and I will sell them for the equivalent of $5 to my clients. And that's how many of the biggest, best poster collections in the world were built, through print dealers who were selling posters to their clients.
And they didn't want advertising.
Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, and that doesn't necessarily increase or decrease the value of the piece. It's just some have text and some don't. Pardon?
Is one more revenue?
Depends on the poster. But in this case, obviously, there is ad copy on everything in this show. But the other way a poster survives, and what this tells me, is when a poster is stolen. Hot merchandise. So if you are a bill poster, your job is to put posters up on the streets. And to be allowed to do that, you would go to your local municipality and you'd say, I've been tasked with putting all 50 of these up. I'm going to pay taxes on each and every one of them so that the local authorities know that I'm putting these up legally. And so they would put tax stamps on all of the ones that you are legally allowed to put up. And then you, poster collector, who realizes that your poster dealer is probably not going to sell you a billboard, you would either bribe her or you would take it when she wasn't looking. It was not taken off a wall. Imagine taking wet toilet paper, putting it on a wall, and then trying to peel it off. It would shred. So it was taken before that happened. So those are the two ways posters survive, and that's what this tells me about. So I love it when I see a poster with a tax stamp. Extra piece of history. Does not increase or decrease the value, is just more awesome. But now Nicho, I believe.
I'm just going to say, look how the typeface changes colors for legibility.
Letter forms. But anyway, I think you want to talk about two pieces that I never talk about.
I do, and it's interesting, or it's understandable that you might think, based on this, that the entire Art Deco movement was based on the works of Cassagne. And while he was far and away the master of the craft, he was hardly the only Art Deco artist. And if he was the best and the best known Art Deco artist in France, the single best Art Deco vorticist artist in the United Kingdom was actually an American whose name was Edward McKnight Kauffer. And Kauffer was born in Montana. He moved to England in the early 20th century. He was there, I believe, during the First World War.
Yes, Cooper Hewitt did a great exhibition on Kauffer a few years ago.
And he was chosen by a visionary businessman named Frank Pick, who was running the London Underground at the time. And Frank Pick decided posters are cool at a time when posters weren't necessarily highly regarded or cool. And he said, I want to go out of my way to hire the best artists, the most prominent artists, to design works for the London Underground. And Kauffer designed several hundred all told. This one is likely far and away, at least in the top 5 of the works that he did. And the poster with its letters, those of you who don't speak English, what do you see? No. The letters explain what's going on. It's the power, the nerve center of London's underground, but even without the lettering, the visual of the image is extraordinary. You have the factory with the water flowing into the factory, generating the power.
You have Battersea Power Station, to be specific,
Battersea
which had
Power
not
Station.
been built yet. It was being built at the time that this poster was made.
You have the turbine, which is running from the electricity generated by the water going to the Battersea pen. Those of you familiar with the London Underground will know that the universal symbol of the Underground is called the roundel, which is the round circle with a horizontal cross through it that says Underground, which is visible right there in the center of the turbine. And the turbine is generating filaments or literally filaments or sinews of power, as exemplified by these thin blue lines, and it's being driven to this mighty figurative arm that, much like the conductor on a train pushing the throttle forward, this arm, energized by all the electricity, is pushing the throttle forward, and it exudes dynamism, it exudes power.
Well, this was also done at the time when they were about to nationalize England's electricity. They had not nationalized it yet. So the Battersea Power Station allowed them to power the underground through nationalized electricity.
So completely avant-garde, both in its design and its social context. I would also just point out the sort of creativity and genius of the typography on the side.
Letter forms.
Where each letter, where it can, sort of replicates the turbine, replicates the roundel, sort of further reinforcing the message. It's a sort of a bold and powerful and wonderful poster. And below it, we have a piece by a French artist named Pierre Fix-Masseau. And before Angelina asked if any of you knew Yves Saint Laurent, much to her chagrin, you're too cool for that. But I suspect, Yves Saint Laurent-less though you might be familiar with this poster here, also by Cassagne, which is for the Nord Express, arguably one of the most replicated, most famous, and highly regarded of all Art Deco images. And this is Pierre Fix-Masseau's sort of reverse take on that. Exactitude means it's exactly on time. And it's talking about the French railways. You have the clock in the background representing that. Then you have this gigantic locomotive from the head on disappearing into the background. The perspective is incredible. And the perspective lines from the disappearing locomotive are augmented by the straight lines of the bumper on the rail and then the crisscross pattern in the station. Even the letter forms along the top are exquisitely constructed. And so the piece really is another, Angelina said this is the best collection of Art Deco posters in the world. So the word masterpiece, the word icon will be kicked around a lot, but this room, present company included, is filled with masterpieces and icons. And this is really one of the greats.
Now, before we go to my last poster on this section, I think there's one more that you want to do. Just look at the photo that we've enlarged on the back wall. That's the Dubonnet triptych in the wild, like from a 1925 photo. And now you're going to follow me to the actual Dubonnet triptych.
Right in front, you can't see it, it's so big.
And we get seating. Okay, so this is one of my favorite pieces in the entire exhibition. It's a triptych, so 3 pieces. And it's advertising Dubonnet. If you go to a liquor store, Dubonnet is still sold in that bottle, still with the same logo, still kind of disgusting. Now, there's this apocryphal tale. And I say apocryphal because there's no real way for me to prove it or disprove it, but supposedly, Cassandra, again Cassandra, was working on the Dubonnet poster, and either the phone rang or the doorbell rang, and he runs off to go answer it, and he comes back and he sees that he's only half filled out the letters, and he's like, oh my God, I'm a fucking genius. Because in French, phonetically, not as written, but phonetically, du beau looks good. Du bon tastes good. Dubonnet, it writes itself. And actually, there's a diary that exists by this artist, Satomi. He's a Japanese designer who came and studied under Cassandra. And there's this part in his diary where he's talking about the moment that he was in the studio when this happened. And supposedly Cassandra looked at him, he looked at Cassandra, and there was some other dude there, and they were like, oh my God, we're amazing. And they start like hugging and jumping around saying how smart they are. So that's the apocryphal tale. Now, there's another cool thing happening in here. Because you're encountering this in succession, you're creating basically like a comic strip, like a narrative over 3 panels. There hasn't really been something like that in graphic design in posters before. So the progression of narrative over multiple panels is new. There have been ads where like the character evolves over time, but not as one successive piece. So that's really important. The other thing that's really cool is this guy, became known as the funny little man. So many other companies started creating this little like geometric critter to advertise their brands because it was just so popular and really nice. Now the cool thing that I like to point out here is this is now printed by Alliance Graphique. Everything you've seen before this is printed by Hachard, which is a printer. Around this time, Cassandra joined forces with Charles Lupeau, who you'll see later on, we talked about earlier, and another designer, and they created what is essentially the first graphic design studio. That's amazing. Now you have designers working directly with corporations rather than somebody working through a middleman. So this is a big moment in time. Finally, my last bit of fun knowledge about the Dubonnet triptych is this ad was so powerful and had such staying power and was so popular that the 3rd panel in 1956, so surviving a war, was reprinted in Denmark and used as a standalone poster. So can you imagine a company like making an ad and then 20 plus years later reusing the same damn ad? That's weird, especially for this time period, but that's how popular and important this poster was. So that's my spiel on Dubonnet. You want to talk about Leroy, but yes. I don't think this is the...
We've been discussing the art, we've been discussing the design, we've been discussing the typography and the letter forms. And these posters are beautiful, and they were all over the streets of the various countries when they first came out. They were not considered to be art at the time. They were considered to be functional advertisements. But now they are highly appreciated and they're highly collected. So my very sort of base question is, what would something like this triptych cost if it came up for sale?
I am not legally allowed to answer that question. Are you asking? But you're the praise. You're like an actual praise.
But you're talking about, honey. This is your thesis, girl.
No. So if this were to come up up for auction today, I would say the baseline price would be $250,000. I could see it going as high as $500,000 if the right people were in the room. With an auction, it's always about who's in the room. If 2 people want something, they're willing to fight it out.
I would totally agree. I would say an auction estimate would probably be $400,000 to $600,000 for the 3.
Are you saying I could be on the Antiques Roadshow?
No, I'm saying you had a good guess there. But the other thing to note is, to the best of my knowledge, this is one of the few existing remaining
Yes,
sets of these three.
there is, I've only seen this once before, and I'm pretty sure it's the one Bill bought. So it might be the same one I've seen in my entire career. So I've been doing this almost 20 years, so.
Since you were 10.
I'm 40, but yeah. So I think you wanted to talk about that
Guys,
before
those
we
of you who
go
are
to the
sitting,
final
just turn
cocktail.
around. We're going to talk about this one. This is the last poster before we get our next cocktail.
It's also the only poster that if it went on the market today in this show, I would 100% buy it no matter the price.
So, again, we talked a lot about Cassandra. I think we're done with Cassandra now for the show, right?
Yes.
So now we're going to talk about another one of the absolute extraordinarily great French designers whose name was Paul Colin. And Paul Colin really made his name designing posters for French music hall performers, mostly female, mostly whom he slept with. That is true, including Josephine Baker. But he was so popular that he was called upon to design many commercial products as well. So Leroy was an optician. And going back to what Angelina said at the beginning about the vacant eyes, you sort of see the face is not there except for the eyes and the vacant glasses. And this very elegantly turned out, perhaps theater goer, he's wearing a tuxedo, maybe the theater, about to put on the glasses so that he can see what's happening. It's startling. A good poster, all pun intended at this point, a good poster should be eye-catching. And this poster is all about the eyes, and it can really stop you in its tracks. It doesn't matter what his face is.
No, wait, what about the letter forms?
I just noticed for the first time his head is all bumpy, which is bizarre. I've never seen that before. His head is not clear. His head is all bumpy.
He's got hair. It's hair. It's the outline of his hair.
I don't think it's, anyway, you can't tell. The point is it doesn't matter.
A lumpy head.
So this collection, this entire collection used to reside in a 19,000 square foot home in Sarasota on the Gulf of Mexico. When we went down to visit, and Angelina and I gave several tours, and the owner, Bill Krause, who's a kind and wonderful man, is also a Art Deco martini shaker enthusiast. So he has a fine collection of Art Deco martini shakers. He's also a martini enthusiast. So we were indulging in far more martinis than were good for our health, and giving tours to the Sarasota Art Museum. And as they say, one can find inspiration at the bottom of the bottle. I had had one martini too many, and I look at this poster, and I'm like, you know, when you look at the letter forms, the typography, the letters, it's a three-dimensional display where the letters are at angles and the shadows are such, and it looks, to my eyes, not just to my drunken eyes then, but to my eyes now, slightly drunk at this point, to be honest, but even by the cold light of day, the letters are ever so slightly blurry and out of focus, and the movement makes it a little hard to read. And it occurred to me, you know, Angelina, I think, used the phrase fucking genius. What this guy did was he made the letters a little bit hard to read. So if you looked at the poster, you said, that's a little hard to read. Oh, it's an optician's poster. I have to go visit the optician. And it's a drunken theory, but I'm fairly certain I'm right, because it's a genius move.
And he never did letter forms like this in any other poster, so they're very specific to this ad.
And just genelessly, can you imagine looking at me like, I can't really see it so straight. Oh my God, I can get my glasses done there. It's fantastic. We're gonna stop now and have one more cocktail, then we're gonna pick up with another poster by Paul Colin. So enjoy the next drink.
Thank you, Nicho. Okay, we are going on to our third and final cocktail. They're on their way. They're on their way. And this is called a sidecar. Nobody is sure of the exact creation of it or how it got its name. Chances are it got its name from motorcycle sidecars from World War I, based on the time period that this drink comes from. Now, the most reliable claim to fame is also that it came from Frank Meyer at the Hotel Ritz, at the Café Parisien. He invented quite a bit of cocktails. We do know it came from France, mostly because there were not really many cocktails invented in the United States during the 1920s. It was Prohibition. So the first recipe of it, many people claim to have invented, but probably Frank Meyer did. And the first recipes that are in print both come from 1922. One is Harry McElhone's Harry's ABCs of Mixing Cocktails. Now, Harry owned a bar in Paris called the American Bar, which is still there. And Hemingway drank there, F. Scott Fish drank there, everybody drank there. That was 1922. At the same time, Robert Vermeer wrote a book called Vermeer's Cocktails and How to Mix Them. So we know it's at least from 1922. Now, Vermeer, however, wrote that the drink was, he was in London, wrote the drink was very popular in France and first introduced in London by McGarry, the celebrated bartender of Buck's Club. McGarry was a guy who also invented the Buck's Fizz, which we know in the United States as mimosas. So both books feature equal parts cognac, Cointreau, which is a orange liqueur, and lemon juice. Now, people tend to call that now the French school or the French style of making this cocktail. In 1930, the Savoy Cocktail Book, published in London by Harry Craddock, he had the, he was like the head bartender at the Savoy in London, and he doubled the amount of cognac. And that's actually the recipe that we are having today. We're not having the equal parts, we're having the double the cognac. Because it's our last cocktail. So that recipe is now known as the English school. Now, traditionally, today, if you get a sidecar in a restaurant or a bar, it will have a sugar rim, the same way a margarita has a salt rim. But that isn't really mentioned until 1934. So we're having the Savoy cocktail style sidecar. And remember how I said that to call something great was, in the 1800s, was a daisy? Another name for this cocktail would be a brandy daisy, because that is a spirit. Daisies were cocktails that were better than what we now call the old-fashioned cocktails, because the sweetener had some kind of liqueur or some other flavoring other than sugar, and it had a citrus. So that was a daisy. You have a spirit, you've got a citrus sweetener, and citrus and a sweetener. So when you would have like a gin daisy, which is gin, triple sec, orange liqueur, and lemon juice, it's called a white lady. Okay. If you do a brandy daisy, it's a sidecar. Now, tequila daisies. Tequila, the citrus is lime juice, and then again, Grand Marnier, Cointreau, and orange liqueur. What is another name for a tequila daisy? Margarita. Right. Why? Because it's a daisy in Spanish. That's right. Everybody says, oh, it's named after this actress, it's named after this singer. Margarita is just daisy in Spanish, that's all it is. So I'm going to show you how to make a brandy daisy, also known as a sidecar. So, for what we're doing, we're using cognac, which is it's actually a really nice cognac. I really, really like it. You can have it on its own. It's quite nice. And this is going to be 2 ounces of a VSOP cognac. Doesn't say VSOP, but this is just, I really like this one. So we're using it. So that's 2 ounces of cognac. Then 1 ounce of a triple sec. I'm using Grand Marnier. You can use Grand Marnier. You can use Cointreau. Curacao is a little different, but Combier is nice. This is a nice one for a sidecar. So 1 ounce of that, and then 1 ounce of fresh lemon juice. So let's see how much I get out of this one. Do it in this. Here we go. So I don't spray everywhere. All right. That is about 3/4 of an ounce. I need a little more. So what I'm going to do for a garnish, it calls for a lemon twist. Since I've just got the 1 lemon here, I'm going to cut my garnish now. Great. All right. And then finish squeezing the juice. we go. Top that off. So that's an ounce of lemon. So it's a 4-ounce cocktail. We've got 2 ounces of cognac. We've got 1 ounce of lemon juice. And we've got 1 ounce of our triple sec. We've got the Grand Marnier. Then we're going to add ice, which I've remembered to bring and have all set to go. And we shake it. When you shake it, with tins like this, you want it to get a little frosty that you can actually write on the side. There we go. Oh. So it's sticky. And if I wanted to do a sugar rim, I would have probably taken a lemon around the edge and dipped it all the way in sugar to have a sugar crust, kind of like a brandy crust that does that as well. But I don't really like things as sweet. This is certainly sweet enough for me. And then again, just a little twist for their lemon, second side, and then that is your sidecar. Cheers.
Who doesn't have a sidecar, since I see some sidecars sidecarring up right now?
They're coming, they're coming.
All right, whoever, does anyone need a sidecar?
I do.
Pause up, pause up. All right, go.
Give the folks
And
some
anyway,
first.
thank you for imbibing, and back to Angelina and Nicho.
Excellent. Of course, Nicho's texting right now. He's just anyway. Well, while Nicho's texting, I'm going to start by talking about some posters on this wall that I love, and also this is the third and final section of the show. So, get in all your
Not
poster
yet, I could
questions
use
while
one.
you can.
Thank you, I waited
This
for
poster
everyone.
for
Take the bigger
Noveltex,
one.
I
Thank
love
you.
it. It's by Seppo. Down there. Oh. Questions? Okay, great. Anyway, what's great about this poster, and it's for a men's shirt and collar company, is that he's taken the logo for the actual company and he's turned it into the face. Like this is actually the company's logo. And that's so cool that he figured out a way to make it even more, take a graphic element and personify it. And so I really like this piece. There was also another example, if you guys know CIMA, which is the Center for Italian Modernism, they had this in their show last year, not this copy, they had a different copy, but I love seeing how different organizations use posters to tell stories. There's a great show at the Met right now that I'm gonna see tomorrow for the first time, but I know it has tons of posters in it on, it's more like 1930s American posters. But posters are always the best thing about any exhibition, so that's my plug. Modiano is the only other poster in the show other than the Leroy that I would buy myself. I just love it. It's for a Hungarian cigarette company. I think this is gorgeous, and I love how our exhibition designer did the line of the wall to continue through exactly where she would hang it. It's like, genius, genius, the finesse. But I'm going to spend my most time talking about the Larignaga. This, I believe, is the only known surviving copy of this poster. I know the maquette exists. The maquette is the preliminary piece that you would give the printer. There's like a painting version of this, but this is the only known surviving printed copy. It's by Jean Carlu, another very important Art Deco graphic designer. He lost his arm, so he re-taught himself how to draw with his left hand, and he had a massive career as an artist with his non-dominant hand, and he could create something like this. This is for a cigar company, and there's a cool story with this. So there's another poster in the show that has a similar story indicating that this wasn't too uncommon. He designed the poster for another brand of cigars, and he submitted it to his printer, and the brand rejected it. So he contacted his representation in England and said, can you find a cigar company in England that wants to use this? And that's why there's English text on here, is because the company in England was like, yeah, we'll use it. And then when he did a subsequent design for the same company, the military figure looked more like an English admiral because he knew his market. So I love this piece, incredibly rare, the rarest, I mean, it's the only known copy. Incredibly rare, incredibly beautiful, incredibly cool, and it's by Jean Carlu. But if you whistle down this way, Nicho's going to talk about the other poster by Paul Collin that we have in the show.
So you can come on either side, I guess. I'm not sure where the view is the best. We're going to talk about this poster. And again, we're looking at a work by Paul Collin, who I mentioned got his real claim to fame was designing posters for performers. And I think everybody in the world knows the name Josephine Baker. Does everybody know the name Josephine Baker? This is not Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was as close to a superstar as the 1920s had. In fact, she was a superstar. And her story was that basically in racist America, as a black performer, she had all the freedom she wanted to not only perform, but to be appreciated and adulated in Paris. So she moved to Paris and performed there. And she paved the way for other black performers to come. And this performer is a substantially lesser known performer named Adelaide Hall, who had been, you'd have to look it up on Wikipedia to get the exact story, but she'd been performing in Harlem. She was picked up by a producer who was producing black shows, and everything I'm saying now is tinged with an obvious racism that back in the 1920s was completely permissible, so much so that Paris in the 1920s was referred to as, what was it?
The black craze.
The black craze, the tumult noir. France was so enamored with black performers, it was known as the black craze. And it really was something that these performers couldn't appreciate in America. So Adelaide Hall came over with her colleagues.
Tim Moore and Bojangles.
Tim Moore and Bojangles. Now, you've seen the movie Moulin Rouge. So they were performing at the Moulin Rouge, and for those of you who don't speak French, Moulin Rouge means red mill. And in Paris, there's a big red windmill on top of the music hall, the Moulin Rouge, which is not only represented by the name, but by this sort of elaborate brooch. And the fascinating thing to me about this is that these performers are so fucking cool and so stylized, it really could be a contemporary depiction, and yet it's 1929, which is just amazing. And he captures their vitality, he captures their sense of rhythm, and I mean, here you see how the patterns are literally vibrating off her dress. So you don't actually see her performing, but you get that idea imparted graphically, which is so wonderful. Their faces are great, their outfits are great, really an incredible poster. And the Moulin Rouge was a fairly prominent place in Paris, but not so prominent that they were able to print thousands of posters. And one of the single most frequently asked questions we get in the poster business is how many of these were printed? Right? If Picasso made a lithograph, he would number them 1 of 100, 2 of 50 maybe. But with posters, these were commercial works, not fine art at the time, so nobody kept track. There's no record of how many were done. So we do sort of reverse deductive thinking. So the Moulin Rouge could probably afford about 500 of these, maybe 750, but they were printed to be put up on the streets of Paris. So if 500 were printed and almost all of them were put up, to Angelina's earlier point, some of these were so appreciated they were in fact soaked off walls. She thinks that's apocryphal. I think it's such a great story. The rumor has it that the poster craze was such that a bill poster would go up at night, put some wheat paste on the wall, paste the poster up, and poster collectors would come out with wet sponges and soak them off the wall and keep them.
What would they put them on? Are they carrying wet paper back home?
Maybe. Roll it up, stick it down your leg.
But it's wet.
You say it like it's not fun.
I've had many wet things in my life.
But some were sold to poster dealers. There was always some overrun, so if they printed 500, there might have been 10 or 25 extra. Nobody knows. But Paul Celan's posters, many of which survive in great numbers, the final part of this reverse deductive reasoning is we look at the market, and you can look at some of these posters and say, you know, this is a rare poster, but in the last 20 years, it's come up for auction at least 5 times. That makes it scarce, but maybe not rare. This poster has only ever been seen once before. And so when Angelina talks about like the Larrañaga poster, which is the only known copy, it certainly wasn't printed as just one. We know these were advertisements, so they were printed in larger numbers. We don't know what kind of a financial bank account the cigar company had. They wouldn't have printed 10, they would have printed 100 or 200 or something. What happened to them? And for something as small as the Larrañaga, which is easy to keep, it's easy to think someone might have spirited one away. But something this large is very hard to keep. And in all of my 30 some odd years in the business, I've only ever seen it once. And that was back in, I think, 2006 when this was,
Bill's copy.
and Bill bought it from us, yes, exactly. But so it's an incredible image. It's joyful, it's stylish, it's cutting edge. It is by all means contemporarily racist, but back then it was appreciated more than you could possibly imagine.
It was racist, but it exists, and it was a depiction of something that existed.
It was the artist's interpretation of something that existed, which nowadays it would be depicted differently.
And if you look
How
at,
much record of what existed?
It's a clear record of the time and the taste, absolutely.
and a lot of Paul Collin's posters for white or black performers were
gonna sneak
this
behind you.
type
Oh,
of stylization.
grab
So
that, it's
it's
not
not
there.
like he treated white performers very differently. They also had exaggerated features. Like that was something that was.
Of how it survived. That is to say that there was no depiction of black performers that would have survived other than this.
Listen, it's easy to imagine that a fan kept this, like an enthusiast, absolutely. People, regardless of the performer, people were crazy about graphic design. Don't forget, even in the time, these things were art, right? And a lot of people couldn't afford art, and this was considered art of the street. So if you were able to get your hands on a poster, you could actually beautify your home without spending thousands of dollars or whatever it was on an oil painting or something else. Yes?
So, any poster that's like in a museum or something, we can assume it's a poster that was printed that was never actually used.
Yes, I would say yes. He would say no, but I would say yes.
I would
and I'm-
disagree. She's wrong.
I'm-
I would disagree. I would disagree forcefully.
No, there was
Oh,
no way. Absolutely no way it was taken off a wall. The posters are printed on the shittiest possible paper. There's no way you could take something. Okay, let's say you sponge this down. It's wet. You now got to carry something wet so it doesn't stick to itself and fall
I'm
apart
gonna-
all the way home.
I'm going to give you another thing. So you talked about the stamps, and I'll get to your question in a second. Sorry, I just have to smack
Also,
it
yeah,
down
they
a
would
little
have
bit.
tax stamps on them. They would have tax stamps on them.
But here's the
if they were
thing:
on
the
wall.
tax stamps were only the first part of the verification. Once the tax stamps were put on, they were then rubber stamped.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes,
no.
sometimes. No, it
That one
depends on
was
the-
not rubber stamped.
Depends on the time period.
So the
Depends on the
rubber
time
stamps
period.
usually mean it was taken off the wall in my book.
Depends on the time period.
But I would say that the ones you see in very good condition were not used. That I would definitely agree to.
And why wouldn't they be used?
So like I said, overruns. So if the Moulin Rouge printed 700 to 500 copies, and there's always an overrun, right? So the Moulin Rouge ordered 700. The printer probably ran 720. He would have given some away to friends. He might have kept some. Back in the 19
Or sold some to a print dealer.
in the 1970s, poster dealers would go to Paris. They would find the printing houses. By the way, that's a great mustache. I'm just going to throw that out there. Well played. They would go into the basement of the printing houses, and they would find rolls, and not these posters, these are later posters, rolls and rolls and rolls of posters that hadn't been used, and they would buy them from the printing house for $5 a piece, bring them back to America, sell them for $75 or $100 a piece. They thought they were very smart, and that was the basis of the modern poster collecting world. So those were just overruns, and there were hundreds, but that was much later than these. Your question. Oh, is there such a thing as poster restoration? So, poster restoration, that's a great question. Poster restoration is a magic thing. So take a look. If you look closely, so you see how the brown of the paper ends here, and then there's white, like sort of bright white that runs all the way around the poster. So that's the same with all of these. Some you have framed so you can't see it, some you can see it. These posters have all been professionally mounted onto linen, which is an archival process. There is an actual piece of linen, and on that linen is archival paper, and then the poster is mounted onto that paper. It's totally reversible. I like to say, if you wanted to take this poster in the bath with you, it would float off its mount. I wouldn't recommend it, but it would. And once it's mounted on linen, they can make all sorts of minor repairs. They can iron out creases, they can paint in losses, they can smooth out tears. So I think almost everything in this collection has been mounted, and some of it has been restored. So a good restorer can actually take an absolutely destroyed piece of paper and make it look pretty good.
I don't understand how you can fix paper.
I can't explain to you how. I just know that if I have something that comes to me in pieces, I can send it out and it comes back to me as a beautiful whole.
Well, they use like vintage paper to do paper fills and stuff. We can show you some stuff that's been restored.
Yeah, I have a few in Connecticut right now. So
At Stanford?
yes.
Yes.
But they can actually they can bleach out like water stains. I'm
Yep.
like, what the hell? This is
Yeah,
great.
They can
it's
do
amazing.
everything.
Sometimes it goes wrong.
Yeah, no, I've seen the metallic lift off stuff.
Sometimes
That's-
plastic surgery goes wrong, and you have to still do it. Like, whoops! I thought you wanted an ear in the middle of your forehead. All right, come on down. We're going to take a look at, I think, do we have time for two more or one
Salvador,
more?
what's our time? Salvador. Oh, he's not even in here. Okay.
All
What
right.
time is it? 7:31. Oh, great. Yeah, we got time. Nicho.
I'm going to do, it seems like we're sort of reverting to type here. This is also Paul Calan. And as I mentioned, he did a lot of product posters. This one is for cigarettes. Again, culturally, cigarettes were completely accepted in the 1920s and 30s, 40s and 50s and 60s.
And the 70s.
And the 70s and the 80s,
and
and not so much now. And they were sold as, if not healthy, then certainly inspired. I mean, this is the weekend cigarette. It's like, have a good time, relax, smoke a cigarette. And it's interesting, if you look at this wall, how things come in triplets or a pair. So on the Calvinist poster next door, you see 3 identical figures. Here you see 3 figures smoking. Here you see 2 people smoking. The great thing about this, again, is sort of a graphic throwback to the product. These were boxes of cigarettes. Does anybody here smoke? No judgment, no judgment. Little judgment, you shouldn't smoke. But aside from that, just kidding, it's fine. I love smoking. until I had a lung removed, exactly, it was fine. So this is the box of cigarettes, and the box of cigarettes folded outwards in almost exactly the same manner as the folding chairs they're all sitting on. So again, it's a visual throwback to the packaging. And these 2 people are so happy smoking, and this guy is it's such a joyful image to relax on your weekends in cigarettes that come in a snazzy folding chair-like package. And also the type forms
Letter forms.
are very, certainly here, the words weekend are very stylized and graphically designed.
Well, also if we're going to stick on cigarettes, you'll notice that this cigarette is kind of flattened, and that's the actual shape that cigarette had. It was like it wasn't fully round, which I love this one. This guy's like so louche.
And just while we're here talking about smoking, Dunhill, you may know the name Dunhill, lighters, cigarettes. This was from a Spanish department store, Berristain, where they sold Dunhill, and it's from a series of, again, we can argue what Art Deco is, we can argue what Art Deco means. To me, I look at this and it's an archly Art Deco image.
Yeah.
The other pictures in the series were equally as Art Deco. I think there's one of sports people. Luggage.
And this is for the first one-handed lighter.
Did the designer have one arm?
No.
That was that other guy.
That's a silly idea, but no.
All right, do you have anything else to say?
we have one more, and then we're done.
Are there any extra cocktails? Find out if there's any extra cocktails.
Salvador, do we have more? Are we out of alcohol?
We may have a few more leftover cocktails, but yeah, the 3 cocktails are.
All right, come over here for the last poster. One thing that we haven't seen so far is any American examples of Art Deco. And while Art Deco came to America later than it hit Europe.
In graphic design. There are many great examples. This one is a very late, and according to the Poster House, the last Art Deco poster that was designed. It's not the final Art Deco poster ever. It's just the last poster in this show.
Oh, right.
But 1939 is kind of the last hurrah
just to show you why I might be confused, I'm going to read the wall text.
that I wrote.
One of the last examples of true deco in the graphic arts.
Yes, it is one of the last examples of true.
It doesn't say in the show.
Well,
it doesn't
in
say
the graphic arts, yes.
The man needs another drink.
Well,
No, the man doesn't need another drink.
because World War II happens.
Right. So the New York World's Fair of 1939 opened 4 months before the Second World War broke out, and it's very safe to say that the Second World War brought an end to all things beautiful and all things clever, and that's fine. This poster is by a European artist named Joseph Binder, who came to America from Austria, where he was a very prominent modernist designer. But this really is one of his best posters, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the history of the New York World's Fair, but the signature structures in the New York World's Fair were the Trilon and the Perisphere. So they actually built these objects which were literally larger in life. You could walk through them. This one, as I understand it, was something like the Whitney Museum, the Guggenheim, where you could walk through in a spiral. And yes, there was a walkway, the Path to Tomorrow, I think it was called, or something. But if you look at the image, and if you look at all of the imagery, it is just so beautifully done. So you have the geometry of the cityscape, which is great. It looks nothing like New York City. But if you look at it, you have no doubt as to what you're looking at. You're looking at a great conglomeration of tall buildings. You have the train, this beautiful Art Deco train, and the ocean liner coming together. The ocean liner companies like the Staatendam that we saw before, like the French line, all the ocean liner companies hugely marketed hugely tickets to the New York World's Fair. So it was one of the most highly visited shows in the world. People came by all means.
Although this was a financial failure.
I think you're mistaken.
I am not mistaken.
I think you're mistaken.
I am not mistaken.
I think you're mistaken.
I'm not mistaken.
The historical record will speak for itself.
I will look at that historical record.
Also, so you have the Klieg lights in the sky, you have the shadows on the Trilon and Perisphere, and then you have this sort of odd but somehow fitting squadron of planes like flying into the night. I don't know if there was an air show or not connected with the World's Fair, but it sort of implies that. So you have all the modern technology, you have all the modern architecture, you have the Trilon and Perisphere. It's just sort of beautiful, literally stars, 2 stars in the sky. And again, one of the things about design, and whether it's typography or letter forms or typographic forms, look how they're not straight, it's an angle, you know, and the angle just adds a whole new level of motion and dynamism to these images. So every little thing is thought out so clearly. And one of the reasons I wanted to end with this poster, not only because it's the last poster in the show, this was the last poster ever made, according to Poster House. Since 1939, there have been no more posters. The next show after this show at Poster House, excuse me, is going to be a show on the history of New York City travel posters.
Who's curating it?
Curated by me. It's going to be great. So I just wanted this to be a segue.
Thank you for, whatever.
Accuracy. Let me tell you, I was proofread so much my ass hurts. Like literally, everything I wrote was fact-checked by 4 people, and they found a lot of problems, including right from the get-go. This thesis is no good. That was the first feedback I had. But the show is going to be great. We will be doing another poster and cocktails for that show. It's going to be in March. The opening is in March. We'll probably do poster and cocktails in April, I would think.
Who knows?
Something like that. But listen, I want to thank you all for coming out. This is like I said, our first time in person, and it's incredible to have you all here. You are young, you are enthusiastic. Some of you, not all of you are young. Everybody else but the 2 old badgers in the corner said endearingly, I don't know them yet, but I'm being very kind. We can't thank you enough, and Angelina and I and Don will be here. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask, but thank you so much.
Yes, other Don. About Poster House?
How it does it, what it does.
Oh, sure.
How it's funded, how it...
Thank you for
For
bringing her
viewers-
back to marketing. That's very good. Thanks for reminding the chief curator of her job, Don. That was good.
Well, we are funded through viewers like you.
I wasn't looking for attention.
But no, our programming.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So we're a very new museum. We opened in 2019, and then there was a pandemic. But we do. What was the pandemic? You missed it.
You were in Florida. It was fine. It happened up north. Florida.
We have 4 exhibition spaces ranging from this one, which is the largest one, to one as soon as you come in, which has between 7 and 10 posters at any given time. And we change them over twice a year. So 4 in the winter, fall, 4 in the winter, spring, 4 in the summer, fall. We have programming associated with each and every exhibition, which is run by this beautiful person over here. And our programming is some of the most dynamic and interesting of any museum in the city. I say that as somebody who's been a member of every museum in the city, and most museum programming is kind of lame. And Salvador makes it glorious. We are a collecting institution. We buy specifically for exhibitions. So like I bought those 3 posters for this show. We do some shows completely from scratch. So if you come back and you see the environmental activism show downstairs, everything in that show was purchased for that exhibition. One piece I actually took off the wall. It was not repainted. It was taped. It was taped, and I had a, and I carry a knife. So.
She carries a knife.
And I carry a knife.
Yeah.
But so we collect. The posters we display are from the 1870s to the present day. We try to represent all countries and cultures because all countries and cultures have posters. And as far as upcoming exhibitions, we have Nicho's show on the history of advertising in New York City. It's 100 years of posters. I'm doing a show downstairs at the same time on Dawn Bailey. If you don't know Dawn Bailey, who I did not know her name either, and I like to work with dead people. So working with somebody alive is very complicated for me. But Dawn Bailey was the first woman to basically run a print ad agency in Hollywood. So if you don't know her name, you know her work. Her first poster was Dirty Dancing. She did the poster for Silence of the Lambs, the Royal Tenenbaums, Barbie. And those will, other than the Barbie poster, all of those will be on view in this exhibition, which talks about how movie posters are made and the rules around movie posters, which is very cool. And we're about to do a show with your friend Lincoln Cushing on OSPAL, the Cuban Revolutionary Group that create amazing propaganda in solidarity with other oppressed cultures around the world. We're doing a show on Attica, the Attica Uprising, and the movements that happened the grassroots movements inspired by that uprising. But we do shows like that all the time. Everything you can think of, we will try to do. So Don, does that answer your question?
No, I want to know gets funded.
Viewers like you, really, it is really view.
No, again, it's not admissions.
No.
It's not the door. It's not the membership. It's membership.
It's membership funds this.
Also contributions.
Oh yes.
Also people who have an interest in this.
Yes, if people are interested in posters, give us one. Yay! We like. Please give us your website.
But to keep it going, we need. I'm the old fart here.
But you also sponsored this program.
Yeah, no, but I'm
You're the coolest old fart.
forward to make the point that if you want institutions like this to continue, if you want exhibits and these fun things to continue, you have to get involved.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please do. Our membership program is awesome, by the way.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn, for that incredible message. If you are not a member of Poster House, please do sign up today or as soon as possible. We have very affordable memberships available at all levels, and that entitles you to a 20% off discount to events just like this. I want to give it up one more time to our beautiful hosts for this evening, Nicho and Angelina. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight. These kinds of programs are not possible without robust attendance from people like you. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. If you have any feedback for tonight's event, let me know, because as we said many times throughout the night, this is our first time doing this in person. I think it went really well, but if you don't, let me know so that we can improve for the next time. I believe Angelina, Nicho, and Dawn are going to stick around for a little bit to answer any questions that you may have. Please go look at the posters if you didn't get a chance to yet. Maybe if you're lucky, they might have another drink for you at the bar. I don't know. That's not my thing. But I just want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. And again, any feedback, let us know.
Thank you, guys.